What up, my homies? We're on the carport. We're going fishing today. Everybody say what's up to Bog. What's up, Bog? Yeah, you're not coming. Sorry. So as you guys know, I designed a jig, that live rocker jig. Val let me build one, Gambler Lures live rocker. And I kind of had some things in mind with it. Act like a Ned, but also act like a, like a mid-stroll kind of dangle thing. Well, I figured out kind of a funky deal. Sometimes when you build a new lure, you have like certain expectations, right? It's going to do this, it's going to fish like this, it's going to catch them this way. And a lot of times there's sort of like tertiary things, little outside the box things that you end up seeing that the lure actually does that you didn't expect it to do that are pretty darn cool. So I'm going to show you, I figured this thing out. I'm going to take you out to Gunnersville and kind of show you and try to catch some fish and show you how it works. But basically the concept is the jig, because it has that flat head, you guys have seen the specs, it has the flat head, the little fin on the top, and that causes it to rock, but it also causes it to kind of like set on the bottom and stand up like a Ned or like a shaky head and that. But the trick is that flat head also acts somewhat like a scrounger to an extent, and it displaces water around the body of the jig. So what ends up happening, if you rig it right, which I'm going to show you in just a second, it will actually make the tail shake without actually having to just like rock the jig back and forth. So there's a subtle kind of shake like that, but then the tail, and this is just while you're reeling, maybe a little bit of like snapping in the line, but not much. The tail on certain kinds of baits actually swims just like a fleeing bait fish. It looks more real than you can believe. So check this thing out. I'm going to show you how to rig it. We're going to get out to the lake, do some fishing, try to catch a few bigs on Lake Guntersville. Before we start dangling, I gotta show you how we're rigging this up, because if you're not doing it right and you're not using the correct baits, it's not gonna do this little sneaky kind of deal. You have to have a specific style of bait. So one way, there's two baits that I've found that work really well. You can't use a fat minnow. You can't use a wider gauge or like a fatter soft plastic. So one of them, you guys have seen this in the video, this is the Duo Pintail. It basically looks like a regular fluke, right? It's a lot thinner. It's not nearly as wide as the Sakamata in that. It's a much thinner style bait. The other thing is it has that little, you can see the tail already doing it. It has that little straight tail. That's the 4-inch version. I like the smaller ones for doing this. Another example would be like the Cast Echo in like the 3-inch or the 3.5 or whatever it is. The other one that I'm doing is this guy right here. This is the Gambler 4-inch minnow. But with this guy, I do a little mod to it. I don't want that big old flappy tail. So what I do is actually take my scissors just like that. And I'm cutting it into a straight tail. And then what I also do too, we'll just rig this one up, is I slightly cut the nose off just like that. And then obviously I got this, a lunker stick, monster bass, got a little spinning reel on there, just a little Blue Garcia, got cast braid, 12-pound to 10-pound leader, and then you're going to tie the rocker jig on with that little loop knot, right? So it does exactly that. You need to make sure, because in a way this is a variation on the concept that I showed you with the Cast Echo and the Queen's Tackle jig. You need to make sure this thing is super duper straight. I guess I can spill the juice, because what's actually going to happen is this thing swims, dude. And it's in part because of two things. One, because of the straight tail, and two, because of this head. So when you're reeling it, the head's ever so slightly, shaking, and it's actually causing that tail to sort of vibrate back and forth. So you're getting that sort of scurrying motion when you're reeling for the bait. It's not so much like a lipless or like a rattle trap, but it's like this scurrying bait sort of evacuation as they say in Florida, but evacuation, and the bait looks like it's scurrying away, running away, getting chased down, and it's sort of under pressure, just like, a bait fish would be when the bass is behind it. So let me show you how this thing works, because I've had some killer success on it, just like reeling it with a soft shake through some of these fish on Gunnersville, dude. They're reacting. It's much more subtle than what they're seeing with like the Sakamatas, the wing fluke, and all these baits that are rolling and rocking and all that. And this bite should only get better as it gets colder, because they're gonna want that more subtle presentation and just that slight wiggle versus all this rocky docky stuff. That is a donkertron, dude. On the rocker jig. Donk-o-tron. Rocker's pretty fat. like that, it just goes almost like a surrounder. It's kind of gnarly. Chonk wonker.
How about it?
So let me show you kind of like what we're targeting, especially with like the active ones. So you see there's like a bait ball on my active target right there. If I can pan around just right, you might be able to see them. It's really hard to kind of notice them. There's one right there. They go in and out. Basically, the active fish are feeding on the bait ball. That's why there's like a giant like cone hole in there, because they're ducking into the bait and eating it, but they're moving around a ton. So you gotta kind of like track the bait and then see when they dart in and out of the bait ball to kind of pick up on which fish are active. Now there's a bunch of fish floating around, but the ones you really want are gonna be darting in or right around that bait ball actually eating, because then they're a lot more willing to eat your little minnow dangler, and it's a lot better for that presentation with it kind of like swimming and skadoodling away. It fits exactly what like one of those shad would look like running out of that ball and getting chased.
Whoa. That was right under the boat. Shouldn't do this, but we're going to. This boat flipped a 4-pounder, dude. How about them apples? Right in the schnozzerola. Let's say the rocker jig works, boys. Let's say the rocker jig works. All right, I'm not saying it's like world changing, but here's what I'm doing that's a little bit different. So obviously we got a little straight tail. It's that thinner bait that I was telling you about. And what's happening is that tail is just oscillating. Like, you ever learn about like cilia in like biology class? So the tail's like oscillating, but to do that, I'm doing a little different retrieve. So what I'm gonna do is, you know, you cast it out. These fish are a little higher in the water column, and I'm still doing a little rod shake, but I'm more so reeling it, almost like you'd reel like a Kitech, like, you know, 6 to 8 foot, you know, like moderate depth on a 1/4 ounce or an 1/8 ounce. And I'm popping the rod ever so slightly. I'm not trying to get the rocking back and forth. All I'm trying to do is make the bait jerk forward just a little. And that's why the thinner bait works better, because it doesn't rock as much and the tail is just gonna shake. So it almost looks like it's scurrying away versus like rocking back and forth. Because I kind of think these fish are starting to get, at least the fish that I'm throwing to here in Gunnersville, I think they're getting a little smart to the whole rockety dockety dock. And it used to be the more rock the better, right? But I think in some of these situations, especially as we get into colder water periods, the less rock and more of just the vibration, like the tail shake, kind of like a swimming Japanese, like slight Japanese shake, the better off you're gonna be. That's a big one. That's a big one. That was a giant, dude. That's gonna call one. See what I actually did there? They were so close to the boat that I spooned them in, basically, to kind of get them to react, because I ran out of real estate. It's a technique that you can use when you're dealing with these guys and they get so close to the boat, you got nothing left to do. And look how he ate it. He made his decision. And it was the right one for me and the wrong one for him. How about them apples, boys? That's freaking badass.
22.68. Dude, freaking, that was a fun day. Now, it's nothing like my buddy, like Jacob catches out here, like 27 pounds, and so like Jake Parr, freaking, all the Jakes actually smash them, the J guys. But dude, I think there's something to this. I'm not saying it's like earth-shattering, like amazing, will change the world, but as we do more of this minnow dangling, like I can tell just fishing for these fish that they've seen it a million times, right? And everybody focuses so much on the rockety dock, dude, the back and forth.
And really, especially as the water gets colder and colder as we go into winter, I think getting an action that's sort of, it has movement and it has kind of like this oscillation to it, but maybe not as focused on the rocking back and forth, because everybody's hyperactive about that, and the fish are seeing it. They're seeing it in the Sakamata. They're seeing it as these guys use these rollerball jigs. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's always nice to be kind of like one step ahead or try something a little different. So what I'm doing, and I kind of highlighted it through the video, but just to kind of recap, what's happening with this jig is with the flat head, the water streaming around, you have to do this with a straight tail type bait. We did it with the Duo Realis. This is the pintail, the little 4-inch. I also did it with the Gambler or the Minnow, but we did the mod on the tail. Basically any kind of straight tail bait, and it has to be a more slender body presentation. And I think what's happening is that water's just streaming around that flat head on the live rocker jig, and it's hitting that tail. I am putting a little English, like a little Japanese shake on it. Not very much though. I'm getting a slight rock, but the majority of it is just that tail kind of going, you know, just like you put like a fluke on a chatterbait and you let that fluke sort of use the energy of the chatterbait to kind of shake and dangle in the back. I think that's kind of the same thing that's happening, and it really has a natural presentation. I'm kind of reeling it, focusing on fish that are a little bit shallower, maybe like 2 to 10 foot, and I'm tossing it out there and getting it behind them, and I'm reeling it and kind of bringing it through. I'm almost like swimming a fluke, if you will, but it's getting that little kind of tail chatter. And I think it's sort of subtle and something just a little more finesse. The water's been extra clear out here on Gunnersville, so I'm personally confident in it. Like I said, I don't think it's going to change the world, but for me, it gives me a little more confidence when I'm throwing to these fish that I know are seeing like 42 Sakamata shads a day. It's not to say the Sakamata doesn't work, the wing fluke doesn't work, things like that, but if you can be a little bit different, why not fire away, right? I'll put links to all this stuff down in the description box at Tackle Warehouse and Monster Bass for you to check out, but give it a try, dude. And it's something you can even try for schooling fish. You don't need forward-facing sonar. I even caught some schooling fish up shallow, like 4 to 6 feet of water, where they're kind of schooling on a flat. You sling that thing out there and you keep your rod tip up, and basically you just like high stick it like you would like a chatterbait or a trap, like right through that flat, and it just swims on its own as you're reeling it. Hope you guys enjoyed this though. Hit that like and subscribe button for me. We will see you back out on the water talking fishing or hanging out with Bog.